Taehyung had never forgotten the silence. When he sent the text a year ago, he'd half expected Jungkook to explode, to cry, to beg, to fight for them. A twisted part of him had almost wanted it, because then he could have told himself that Jungkook cared too much, that the weight of it all was suffocating, that breaking up was the right thing to do. But Jungkook never replied. Not that night. Not ever. And that silence was louder than any words could have been. At first, Taehyung told himself it was for the best. He was stressed, drowning under the pressure of his family's expectations, his own career, the idea of commitment looming over him like a shadow. He had convinced himself that Jungkook deserved better than someone who couldn't promise forever. But forever kept haunting him anyway. Late at night, when the world was quiet, he thought about Jungkook's laugh, the way his doe eyes softened when he was tired, the gentle way he used to trace patterns on Taehyung's hand when he thought he wasn't looking. The apartment felt colder without him. Meals tasted duller. Even music, Taehyung's first love, sounded empty. Regret tasted bitter. By the time a year had passed, Taehyung couldn't take it anymore. He picked up his phone, heart pounding, and called the number he had memorized too well. It rang, and rang, and rang, before cutting off. So he tried again. And again. And when Jungkook didn't answer, he sent a message. Jungkook, please. I need to talk to you. I made a mistake, but silence answered him, just as it did a year ago. For the first time, Taehyung realized what it felt like to be on the other side, to be the one waiting, hoping, praying for a reply that never came. And that terrified him more than anything else. Because Taehyung had already lost Jungkook once. He couldn't lose him again. So he made a decision. If Jungkook wouldn't come to him, Taehyung would go to Jungkook. Jungkook was in the middle of cooking dinner when the knock came. Sharp. Urgent. At first, he thought it might be his neighbor. Or maybe a delivery mistake. He wiped his hands on a towel and walked toward the door, humming softly under his breath. But the moment he opened it, his heart stuttered to a stop. Jungkook. Taehyung stood there. Taller, broader, but with eyes that looked anything but strong. His hair was messy, his lips pressed into a trembling line, and for a second, Jungkook wondered if he was hallucinating. Because it had been a year. A whole year of silence. And yet here he was. Jungkook's hands tightened around the doorknob. His voice came out sharper than he expected. What are you doing here? Taehyung's chest rose and fell, like he'd run the whole way. His voice cracked as he answered, I had to see you. You've seen me, Jungkook said coldly, already starting to push the door shut. But Taehyung's hand shot out, pressing against it, desperate. Please? Just listen to me once. I made a mistake. Jungkook laughed bitterly, though it hurt. A mistake? You don't get to call what you did a mistake. You broke me over a text message, Taehyung. Do you know what that did to me? Taehyung flinched, his throat working as if he were swallowing shards of glass. His voice dropped, raw and trembling. I know. And I regret it every single day. I thought I couldn't give you what you wanted. I thought I'd ruin you if I stayed. But the truth is, I ruined myself by letting you go. For a long moment, silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Jungkook's eyes burned, but he held his ground. His voice was steady when he whispered, once you leave me, Taehyung, it's goodbye forever. The words cut, and this time, it was Taehyung's turn to break. He sank slightly against the door frame, eyes glistening. Then let me fight for you, Jungkook. Just once. Please? If I walk away now, I'll never forgive myself. Jungkook's chest tightened painfully. He wanted to slam the door. He wanted to let him in. And that war between anger and longing was tearing him apart. For a long moment, Jungkook just stared at him. Taehyung, the man who had shattered him with one careless text, now stood trembling on his doorstep like a sinner at the altar. And part of Jungkook hated how his heart still leapt at the sight. How the scent of Taehyung's cologne, faint but familiar, could still unravel something in his chest. He clenched his jaw. No. He couldn't let himself fall again. Go home, Taehyung, Jungkook said quietly, coldly. There's nothing left for you here, but Taehyung didn't move. His hand pressed harder against the door, his voice desperate. Jungkook, please. Just let me explain. Explain what? Jungkook snapped, his voice breaking like glass. That I wasn't worth a face-to-face goodbye? That the person you claimed to love was only worth a few sentences over text? Taehyung's lips parted, but no words came. His silence was an answer in itself. Jungkook let out a bitter laugh and shook his head. That's what I thought. He pushed the door harder this time, and Taehyung's resistance faltered. The gap narrowed until only Taehyung's eyes, wide, pleading, unbearably soft, were visible. Don't shut me out, Taehyung whispered, voice raw. Not forever. Jungkook's throat tightened, but he forced the words out, steady and final. You left me once. You don't get to come back. Once you're gone, Taehyung, you're gone forever. And with that, he slammed the door shut. The sound echoed through the apartment, but the silence afterward was louder. Jungkook pressed his back against the door, his chest heaving, tears burning hot in his eyes. On the other side, Taehyung stood motionless, his hand still resting against the wood, as if he could will it open. His heart ached with the realization, this wasn't going to be easy. If Jungkook had built walls, Taehyung would have to break them brick by brick. And he would. Because this time, he wasn't leaving. For the next 2 weeks, Jungkook's world was restless. Taehyung tried everything. He waited outside the hospital after Jungkook's long shifts. He left handwritten notes slipped under the door. He even stood in the rain one evening, drenched and shaking, until Jungkook finally snapped and told him to go home. But no matter how hard he tried, Jungkook never let him back in. Because the truth was, Jungkook's silence wasn't cruelty. It was self-preservation. He had given his heart once, whole and pure, and Taehyung had crushed it without hesitation. To give him another chance, it would be like reopening a wound that had just begun to heal. One evening, Jungkook finally found Taehyung sitting on the steps outside his apartment again, head buried in his hands. He sighed, his chest heavy with exhaustion, not just from work, but from the endless weight of everything unsaid. Taehyung, Jungkook said softly, and the man's head shot up, eyes desperate. Jungkook, please, no. Jungkook cut him off, firm. His voice didn't shake this time. You need to listen to me. Really listen. Taehyung's lips trembled, but he nodded. Jungkook took a deep breath. His heart pounded, but his words were steady. You broke me. Do you understand that? You left me over a text. And you never came back until now, when it's too late. Taehyung swallowed hard, tears brimming. I regret it every day. I thought I was protecting you from me, but I was wrong. I need you, Jungkook. Jungkook's throat tightened, because part of him still wanted to believe those words. But he forced himself to remember the nights he cried alone, the mornings he had to drag himself out of bed when his heart felt like it couldn't beat anymore. He shook his head slowly. Needing me now doesn't erase the fact that you didn't choose me then. And I can't live my life waiting for the next time you'll decide to leave. Taehyung's tears finally fell, his body trembling as he whispered, "So, this is really Jungkook's eyes softened." For a moment, he wanted to reach out, to hold him, to soothe him like he used to. But he didn't. He couldn't. "It's goodbye, Taehyung," Jungkook whispered, voice breaking but certain. Goodbye forever. The silence that followed was deafening. Taehyung's face crumpled, his shoulders shaking, but Jungkook stood tall. He turned, opened the door, and stepped inside without looking back. When the door closed, it was final. That night, Jungkook cried quietly into his pillow, not from weakness, but from release. Because this time, the tears weren't for Taehyung. They were for himself. And for the first time in a long time, Jungkook felt the stirrings of peace. Because letting go wasn't the end. It was the beginning.